Welcome to Engage.Connect, the webcast series on pathways, innovation, and leadership, presented by the National Center for College and Career Transitions, NC3T. Hans Meter, president of NC3T, a nationally recognized expert on pathways and author of The Power and Promise of Pathways, is your host. Let's join Hans for today's webcast.
Welcome to Engage.Connect, the webcast series on pathways, innovation, and leadership, hosted by the National Center for College and Career Transitions. I'm Hans Meter, president of NC3T, and I'll be the facilitator for today's session. At NC3T, our vision is that every learner has a dream and a plan, and every community has a capable, ready workforce. Toward that end, NC3T is a mission-driven organization that delivers technical assistance, coaching, and consulting services to support the success of state and local education leaders. In today's webcast, we are going to explore teaching the skill of self-regulation in early childhood education. You'll be learning about the very important work of the Horizon Education Alliance in Elkhart County, Indiana, and the preschool curriculum Tools of the Mind, which HEA is helping several school districts in Elkhart County, including Elkhart Community Schools, implement. As we will learn, Tools of the Mind is focused on helping develop children's social, emotional, and cognitive regulation. Now, early childhood education is a bit outside of the normal wheelhouse of NC3T, where we primarily focus on career development, pathway programs, and employer engagement. And most of those really ramp up in late elementary school, but mostly in middle school and high school. But in our pathway system framework, we also promote a holistic approach to developing career and life readiness. And when you go deeper into the definition, you see a cluster of critical thinking skills that are adapted from the Department of Education's employability skills framework. And those critical thinking skills include thinking critically, thinking creatively, making sound decisions, solving problems, reasoning, and planning and organizing. We know that in life, these competencies don't just magically appear in someone fully formed. They take years of learning and development, so the earlier that children start developing these habits of mind, the better. And in addition, at NC3T, we've been learning about the work of the Horizon Education Alliance, and we've been really impressed with their cradle to careers approach for developing the educational attainment of children, youth, and adults in Elkhart County. Working with the Indiana Pathways Innovation Network, we've developed a series of case studies about the Horizon Education Alliance, and in one of these, we are focusing on their work on behalf of young children and parents. And those case studies are being posted with today's webcast. So let me now introduce today's presenters, Kathy Royer and Kimberly Boynton. Kathy is the Associate Director of Horizon Education Alliance. She has worked as an educator and a social worker throughout her career, and with most of her professional life working in non-traditional education settings with children and adults. She was Executive Director of the Learning Generation Initiative and previously worked for over a decade at Notre Dame Center for Social Concerns as the Director of Community Partnerships and Service Learning. Prior to that, she taught high school in Kenya and managed 3 United Nations refugee programs in Africa. She also provided leadership to the Veritas Academy, which is a grades K-8 charter school in Indiana. And she was recognized by the University of Notre Dame for her work in building the relationship between the university and the community of South Bend. Kimberly Boynton, or Kim, is Director of Professional Development and Grant Development and Pre-K Services at Elkhart Community Schools. Kim is a licensed speech pathologist in Indiana, and she began her career as a school-based speech-language pathologist, opened a private practice working with children of various ages. She also worked on an evaluation team and provided speech-language pathology interventions for the Indiana First Steps program. In 2010, she became the Special Education Preschool Coordinator for Elkhart Community Schools, and has worked also as a Director of Grant Development, Professional Development, and Director of Pre-K Services. So I want to welcome Kathy and Kim. Thank you for sharing with us today. We'll be, just for our listeners, our viewers, we will be putting this set of slides as well as other show notes and our speaker biographies on the website in conjunction with this webcast. So now I will turn it over to Kathy and Kim.
Thank you, Hans. Kathy and I are here today. We're excited to share some information about some exciting work that we're doing here in Elkhart County surrounding tools of the mind. And we're going to talk about how the Tools of the Mind curriculum helps children develop cognitive, social, emotional, self-regulatory, and foundational academic skills that will benefit them in school, future work, and life success experiences.
Well, this is Kathy, and we're going to talk today about the early education. HEA provides, as Hans said, cradle to career interventions that will increase educational opportunities for our whole community. We realized early on that if we invest in early education, our children will be more prepared to take advantage of the opportunities that come later in their educational lives. Today we're going to talk about planning play. That's a possibly new concept. Playing sometimes means running around and being silly, but for Tools of the Mind, which is a program that we are going to talk about today, planning is important. We're going to talk about how children can learn to focus their attention and memory using play and planning. And we're going to the core message is how children can learn self-regulation through the Tools of the Mind program. Play planning. Play planning is something that is central to Tools of the Mind, and it provides children with a way to strengthen their memory and to learn how to focus and pay attention. As you will see, when children play, they pretend to be grown-ups. That gives them a chance to practice grown-up skills. Why play plan? Why do we do play plans? Play plans support literacy. Actually, children, it's an amazing thing. Children learn to write, not just write letters, not just write their name, but write their plans for the day. They develop an executive function. They think ahead. What does it mean if I'm going to be the doctor? What kinds of things will I do? And it then assists them as they play to remain purposeful in their activity. This video will help, it shows research results that show how dramatic play helps children to gain these skills.
In one study, children were asked to remember a list of unrelated items, and researchers looked at how many items they could remember. Then they engaged children in a make-believe play scenario. Children were to pretend they were grocery shopping and had to remember what to buy in the pretend store. Similar items to the ones children were working to remember when they were given the list. When engaged in make-believe play, a study by Zinaida Manuelenko found that 5-year-olds could stand still longer when they were playing the role of a guard than they could when the researchers merely asked them to just stand still for as long as they could. The child's inhibitory control was improved in a role-play situation. Then, the researcher had the child stand tall and still as a guard with several more children and found that when engaged in make-believe with others, each child was able to stand still for even longer. She experimented on the effects of make-believe play on different ages and found that the impact of make-believe on children's ability occurs in a key period of development, early childhood. This was also true for the study on memory and the impact of make-believe play. In play, a child is always above his average age, above his daily behavior. In play, it is as though he were a head taller than himself. Vygotsky. In tools, we see this all the time. Here's an example.
Olivia and Isaiah and Josh. Lizzie and Esme. And how about you join these?
Okay, you just have to find a color. I'm sitting there.
No, you weren't.
I want to sit
You
there.
want to sit there. But he's
I
there.
don't
But
know.
he's there right now.
Let's see, I'm trying to make this long
Sydney, what do you
line.
say to your friend?
To Ethan.
Ollie.
No, you say say.
How old are you? 5. Like, pretty different. You have to stay here for 2 minutes. I'm not going to get to play. I go out and ask the nose about it. I hold a breeze and then there's Kong in it there. Kong and Matt is your number.
We are going to jump carefully and quietly. Help me with my lines.
So we want to talk a little bit about what is self-regulation and why is it important. Self-regulation is important in life in general. We have many environments that we have to interact with, and practicing self-regulation allows us to have an appropriate response to the various environments and situations that we're exposed to. It allows us to have successful social interactions because we can read people's perspectives and respond appropriately given a situation. It gives children and adults an ability to control their attention and focus. You have to be able to attend to tasks and focus to complete something that might be challenging. It allows a control of emotions. Certain emotions are appropriate in certain situations, so understanding and being able to control the emotions in those situations, depending on the situation, is important. A persistence with challenging tasks. Something that self-regulation gives us is the ability, when a task gets hard, to persist to completion, continue to problem solve and critically think rather than giving up or becoming frustrated. It also gives us the skill to manage our thinking, our behavior, and our feelings in a variety of situations. And it allows us an opportunity to manage energy to increase efficient use of time. So an example of that is we don't want to spend all of our energy on an easy task and then not have enough energy to complete a more challenging task. So by learning how to expend the right amount of energy based on how complex a task is, it allows us to keep our energy for those things that might have increased challenges to them. This next video that we're going to share is based on something called buddy checks and study buddies that's used in the Tools of the Mind curriculum. And as you watch this video, what we want you to be paying attention to is the peer interaction, the focus and attention to the task, the peer review and collaboration, and the ability for children to take input from their peers. And this is really the start of teamwork and collaboration and being able to accept input and perspective from others that's going to be important for children as they move forward in school, in work, and in life experiences.
Could you please read for me? So you know point the words. Climb with grabbing hook. Okay. Annie saw a door. Jack climbed the moon. Annie saw have you seen this one? Can we build it? Yes. And say hi to the moon. Annie said to say hi to the moon. That's Annie as a cat and Jack as a dog. No problem. There's no space right here. You need a date. You have to finish your date. I love that. And the J right here is backwards. No, you did. 4, that's 15, that's 14. Okay, 15. Now that's good. And him with the paper, and they're singing on the chair with the team captain's basket, and they're saying, is it D or the THE? And he says, I am going to, because he's thinking I am going to, and then my message is, Tuddy, buddies, are happy, because they're both happy. They're like a team.
So what happens if a child does not have well-developed self-regulation? Some of the things that we might see in children in the early years is they might have difficulty with transitions. So when they change from an activity that they like to an activity that they are not as interested in, or they change from an activity to another activity, they have difficulty with those transitions. Again, switching from a desired to a less desirable task, learning to handle those less desirable tasks appropriately. They might have challenges attending to tasks, so maintaining focus to complete tasks or working together with their peers to be able to solve a problem. They might be easily discouraged, so if they're facing a challenging task and they become frustrated, are they able to handle that frustration? Often when children don't have well-developed self-regulations, they become discouraged and they might quit before they're able to complete the task. They might also have wandering attention, so they might not be focused on the things that are most important in their environment. They might be focused on those outside distractions that happen in all of our environments.
I would just say, as you listen to that list, just imagine the much more success children would have in a school situation if they have self-regulation. They will be able to be much more successful.
So one of the questions that often comes up is, are children born with self-regulation skills? Babies are actually born with the foundation for self-regulation, but we acquire and build those self-regulation skills through a variety of experiences, through play like that you find in Tools of the Mind, and through social interactions. And Tools of the Mind offers a structured way to approach these situations so that they can practice in a safe environment with peers, where they can make mistakes and they can learn through the process of play, and then they can take those skills and generalize them into their everyday life. So again, as Kathy mentioned earlier, as we think about children moving forward in school, into the workplace, into life, they've had opportunities to practice those skills so that they can self-regulate in those situations. And it's important to note that any individual can learn self-regulation at any age. It just takes opportunities for experiences and practice of those self-regulatory skills.
You know, it's probably a little bit like swimming or riding a bike. You can learn it, sometimes it's easier to learn it early, but you can learn it at any age, and once you've learned it, you have it. Self-regulation in adults, how do you know that, how do you manage, how can an adult begin to practice self-regulation? I imagine everybody has known somebody who could use some self-regulation skills. One thing is, when emotions get high, take a deep breath, calm down. Deep breathing is important. One way to measure yourself is to count to 10. Sometimes it helps if you have someone that you can vent with. Another practice is to just simply Maintain your attention. Pay attention to what you're doing when it's hard. Persist when it's challenging. Even with someone you care about, you persist. With someone you're married to, you persist. With a challenging problem, often persistence leads to success. And then finishing your task. I had a problem when I was a kid. It was easy to drop something and go to the next thing without finishing. I had a father who said to me, you need to finish what you started, and that's self-regulation. This is the last and the closing part of this conversation, and it's a video that was produced by the Harvard Center for the Developing Child. What it does is it pulls together a system approach to building self-regulation. It's important to build self-regulation skills in children, but we can do it better if our whole community values and practices self-regulation in conscious ways. And this video will describe that process.
All right. Thank you so much, Kathy and Kim. That was fascinating and really, really encouraging and exciting. So I have a couple questions that pop up, and you addressed them to some degree as to whether children or babies are born with self-regulation. Let me ask you this. In today's society, we seem like we have environmental attention deficit disorder with all of our technology and just the kind of everywhere internet. Do you sense, is there any research that actually confirms or contradicts the idea that attention spans are getting worse with living in a kind of highly technological society?
I think as we're moving into technology, which certainly is a wonderful tool that helps us be accessible to the global world and gives children opportunities that I know I didn't have as a child, I think we have to be more conscious about the type of play opportunities that we give children. You know, Tools of the Mind offers a very structured play approach that allows children to practice simple things like what happens when you go to the grocery store, or what happens when you take your pet to the vet. And so just making sure that in the face of learning through technology and using it as a tool, that we continue to provide those opportunities to practice those self-regulatory situations that happen as we're out in the world interacting.
Mm-hmm.
I would just add, I think that research is, I haven't seen definitive research on this, and I think sometimes it's easy to jump to the conclusion that technology is distracting. One of the things I thought about in the play that the children do in Tools of the Mind, they often have a cash register or a telephone, and they learn how to use it in the course of their life work. So in that way, I would say that they're learning to integrate technology in a way that uses it as a tool.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Tell us a little bit about the positive research impact, and one thing I'm particularly interested in, is there any correlation between using Tools of the Mind and later on the incidence of attention deficit disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder? Is there any connection between those?
They've definitely done research that says that with Tools of the Mind practiced with fidelity, there is more, that children have stronger social-emotional skills and are less likely to be referred for learning disabilities and disorders. I would say including attention deficit disorder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it certainly seems like if it really works as well as it seems to, that it would have an impact on that, because there's a lot of kids that are probably kind of in the middle somewhere where, you know, it's somewhat nurture, somewhat nature, and in terms of their distraction and lack of focus.
I think that Kim's school system has made a decision to use tools of the mind as what we call a tier 1 preventative intervention. So all of the kindergartens in Elkhart Community Schools will be tools of the mind kindergartens. And the reason for that is they believe that these problems later will be prevented.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So Kim, one question I had for you, thinking about these preschoolers right now who will then enter your school system and start moving up the ranks. How will what they've been learning and these self-regulation tools, how will that be kind of folded into the K through 6, K through 8 environment so that it doesn't get lost or kind of fuzzy over the years?
I think what we've seen already, because we've had a few classes of kindergartner or preschoolers who have moved into kindergartens and kindergartners who have moved into first grade, is we're seeing that the pace of learning is much faster. The ability to work independently and collaboratively with their student peers is showing up already. And what we're finding is that we have to kind of up our game, because the children are ready for more knowledge and more learning, and they're challenging us with their critical thinking skills. And I think that's just happening naturally. And I think what we're finding is that by children being able to attend better, being motivated to persist through challenging problems, is that it isn't lost. In fact, it's opening a window for us to teach them even more things and give them opportunities to explore their own learning and develop their own problems. I think that idea that we always have to have an answer is kind of going a little bit away, and it's the idea that children asking a lot of questions and coming up with their own questions is what we're kind of feeding, because really that's the reality of our world today.
Mm-hmm. And are the teachers in those upper grades being trained at all in the tools of the mind process and terminology so that they will be reinforcing those concepts?
The really neat thing that we're seeing is that we have had a lot of collaboration between our pre-K, our K, and our first grade teachers, which is kind of where our students are right now, talking about the terminology, talking about what is working, having those teachers observe what's going on in those classrooms, and using a professional learning community approach to talking through what those students have experienced, what they've learned. And again, the students are kind of driving some of that discussion too, is they're explaining what they did in kindergarten to the first grade teacher, and then the first grade teacher is having to go back to the kindergarten teacher and say, tell me more about this. And so it's really neat to see the students really take ownership and drive their own learning.
Mm-hmm. That's exciting.
You know, another thing that Kim has told me that she didn't say is that they've also seen students retain more over a break, like summer break. So they come back more ready than students who didn't have tools of the mind. And I guess I would say that I think vocabulary and terminology and using the same system is somewhat important, but it's like riding a bicycle. Once they learn self-regulation, they like it. It feels good to them to do that, and they do it wherever they are.
When we continue to say that children are ready to learn, and that is so important, is that they have the skills that they're ready to learn, then it really is a whole world of things that we can teach them.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Yeah, in our pathway system framework and in the resources around that and the power and promise of pathways, we talk about dynamic teaching learning as one of those components, and so it's really incumbent on the school to try to help develop these capabilities in the child, and then for each classroom to reinforce that, and for the classroom just to become more engaging in the way teaching and learning happens. I'd hate to think that we put all the emphasis on teaching the children self-regulation so that they can endure a thoroughly boring class, which I still have very fresh memories of some of the classes I sat through, and my mind was wandering and I was not attending to the task because not much thought had been put into how to make the task interesting or engaging. So it seems like the ball is in both courts to help the child really develop their attention, and also for the school and the teachers to make engaging content. So, well, very good. Any final thoughts you wanted to share with us before we move on?
No,
No, the
I don't think so.
conversations have been good.
Yeah, it's been really, really excellent. Thank you so much. We'll again thank our presenters, Kathy Royer and Kim Boynton, for joining us today. And to learn more about HEA, well, you can visit heaindiana.org. We will also have Kathy and Kim's contact information at the end of the slide deck. So for NC3T, if you need any additional information, we have our resources here, the Power and Promise of Pathways, the Employer Engagement Toolkit, the STEM Leader Guide, as well as a number of other tools and resources you can find on our website. We have our weekly Pathways Sherpa blog that you can subscribe to and get information that's tailored toward a school leader who's implementing a Pathways program. So if you need any special information or additional information, here's my contact information and NC3T's website, as well as Kathy and Kim's information. We encourage you to check out other episodes of the Engage.Connect webcast series at our website, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for joining us today at Engage.Connect. We invite you to join us for our webcast series as we seek out and share best practices in pathways development that you can learn from and apply. Learn more by visiting us at www.nc3t.com.